Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of our series. It's a family affair. So, last week we covered the topic of meal planning and how to make that work for your family and your household. Today, we will be talking to Sally Sampson, the founder of ChopChop Family, a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to inspire and teach families to cook and eat real food together. Thank you, Sally, for being here with us this morning. How are
Thank
you?
you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Well, I love the mission of your organization. And some of the participants in our CYL Squared program have enjoyed the publication and the newsletters as well, because we shared it with our coaches so that they could share with their families, with their participants. Now, I'm curious though, how did you come up with the concept for this organization?
So it's kind of a long story. I'll try to shorten it. So basically, my background is as a cookbook writer and recipe developer. So I did that for years and years and years and years. And then I had a child who had she's fine, but she has a chronic illness that required her diet to be, shall we say, heavily monitored. And in the process, when she was first diagnosed, they thought that she should be on a low-fat diet. And so I ended up doing an enormous amount of research on low-fat diets and healthy eating. I mean, I was already ate that way. But anyway, so I ended up doing a lot of research. And at some point, I thought, I can use all this information that I'm learning to help other families, because it seemed to me that, I mean, number one, at the time when I launched ChopChop, obesity was a really big focus. It's still a big problem now, but I think the focus now is a little bit more on sort of broader than that. It's like, how does everybody eat well? How do families eat well, spend time together in a productive way, address a million different things. So anyway, I have this idea that I would try to get doctors to prescribe cooking during well child visits. Again, at that time, doctors were just beginning to be mandated to talk about healthy eating and physical activity. And it just seemed like a really important thing to me. So I live in Boston. I approached a couple of doctors here. They liked the idea. Then it just grew. And really the initial idea was to get ChopChop and to get the idea of cooking together in pediatricians' offices. But once we launched, then it was like after school programs, schools, sort of basically wherever you found children. So that's my long answer to your very short question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love hearing about that connection between, maybe the chronic disease and then also the family bonding, because it's in for the case of a child, they have no control over what's going on or what's getting purchased and what's being brought into the house. So
Right.
like it really definitely has to be a family involved thing, right?
It really does. And one of the things that we suggest to people is that I know grocery shopping with a child can be difficult, but if what you do is you say, we could make this or we can make this tonight, and then you could choose this or you could choose this, so that if you make the rules, but you bring the kid in for some of the choices, or even let's try a new vegetable today. And maybe the kid is really obsessed with the chip aisle, but once you bring them someplace new and say you get to choose, it can really make an impact.
Yeah, I love that. And keeping them in control, like let them feel like they have some control over what's going on in the kitchen.
Like that thing that parents do, which is, do you want to wear the green pants or do you want to wear the blue pants? Yes. They're going to wear pants. But once you say this or that, the kid is like, oh, I decided.
Yeah. I like that, putting it into their hands. And I think that kind of goes into the next question I was going to ask is like, why do you think it's important to get kids involved in the kitchen?
Because it's a skill that lasts forever.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a skill that lasts forever. And even if, like, almost no matter what you're doing in the kitchen as a 3-year-old, if you're cooking, it starts to I'm trying to think of the right word, you know, you will just keep doing it. You may not cook the same things, but you will sort of have that in you. And I think that, you know, not only does it bond you with whoever you're doing it with, it could be a parent, it could be a babysitter, it could be an aunt, it could be a neighbor, it could be anything. That's this immediate connection, but also you're learning math. So you take a recipe and let's say it's serving 4 and there's only 2 of you and you don't want leftovers. You have to cut that in half. And so, you know, obviously you can't do that with a 2-year-old, but you can start doing that with a 4-year-old. You know, you can just say it takes 4 of this, you know, and you can start teaching math and there's science. So it's fermentation or emulsification for a salad and cultural literacy. Like you think about if you're eating some other culture's food, which we're all doing now, you really can't be demeaning about that other culture. It can't be that like their food is delicious, but they're not good people. So you begin to get this kind of more general literacy about the world. And speaking of literacy, there's financial literacy. You can do things with kids where you say, we're going to make dinner for $10. Let's go to the grocery store. And there's, I mean, cooking, it sounds goofy, but we think cooking is everything. There literally isn't anything that you can't talk about through the lens of cooking or eating. And that everybody eats. So people can get engaged pretty quickly.
Yeah. You know, and during the first part of our series, we did talk a lot about, you know, how to get the kids excited about cooking and all of these things. And you've mentioned some really great ways of doing that, you know, putting them in control or, you know, giving them options. And so I think it's important to understand too that, you know, if we start these kids off early doing this, like now, like you said, they have a skill for a lifetime, but they also
Right.
kind of understand why, you know, eating the broccoli is important. And they have developed a taste for the broccoli.
Exactly.
So they're not an adult trying to figure out how to make themselves eat broccoli.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think that the more engaged kids are in almost anything,
Yeah.
the more they have a stake. And, you know, even things like, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you just like count out those tomatoes for me while I'm making the salad? Can you know, can you help me? Because what does a kid want more than to feel like they've got some power and that they can help an adult and that they have adult skills?
Yeah.
And, you know, even this even works somewhat with picky eaters.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one of those here at the house.
Ooh.
So we've been trying a lot of different ways of just kind of getting him into eating. And as long as, you know, a lot of it is as long as he sees me eating it, you know,
Right.
he's a little bit more curious about it. So, you know,
Right.
we have to look at ourselves and be those role models for the kids as well.
We did an event once where we were having kids make their own sodas. So, you know, we had seltzer and then we had a million different kinds of juices. And this little boy was at the table and his mother was sort of a ways off and he started to pour the seltzer into a cup. I'm not exaggerating. She ran screaming and said, "You don't like seltzer."
Oh my gosh. Wow. And
I
waited
mean,
to
he
get
was
imprinted with
totally
that.
game. I'm sorry, what?
I was just like in a native way to imprint that on him. I mean, like,
Right,
oh, okay. Well, and he was going to try it. Why not let him try it?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah. And so we put our own thoughts and feelings onto these kids. Yeah. Yeah. You know, and I have a 2-year-old. He's 2.5.
Oh, and
And
that is your picky eater?
because he used to eat
Oh, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's what everybody says. It drives me crazy though, because I'm like, he used to eat everything. I mean, everything. And then all of a sudden it was like, what's this on my tongue? Oh, the broccoli. Oh, so
That's actually a developmental thing.
yeah,
And I really wouldn't worry about it. And my only advice to you is not to make a thing of it.
yeah. Okay. Okay. I know.
Really do it. Talk to your friends, call me, but don't do it with him because then he's like, oh, I'm getting her attention. This
Yeah.
is good. So just keep feeding him the same things. Basically, our opinion at Chop Chop is it's your job as the parent to offer it.
Yes.
It's the child's job to decide if they want to eat it.
Okay.
People don't always like that.
Yeah.
but it works.
Okay. That's very good
He will
advice.
not starve.
No, he doesn't starve. That's for sure. He finds something.
Right.
Yeah, and I talked in the first part of the series about, my husband being a snacker, and so he's like watching my husband snack, and of course he wants a snack on the chips and all of that stuff too. So I'm like, I think that's the part that kind of makes me a little crazy. It's like, okay, I need him to eat the other stuff. So I do offer it, and he sees
Yeah.
me eating it. So I'm like, okay, this is the best I can do right now. Let's know that it's available. And he does. He sees me cooking stuff or putting stuff in my mouth, and he's like, I want to taste. So
Right.
it's starting. It's starting to get better.
Good.
But I'm curious though, what would you say would be the ideal age to start getting the kids like really involved in the kitchen? And I know you said counting out like some grapes or something of that nature. He would probably do that. But what about when it comes to like chopping and, really kind of getting involved with the recipes?
So I think 2 is a little young for a knife.
Yeah.
People would disagree with me there.
Okay.
Some, very few would. But I think the thing to do with your son is whatever, first of all, like what I did with my kids. Now, I was a cookbook writer when my kids were little, so I was cooking all the time, but I literally had them like on a bouncy seat and I would monologue. I would say, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing that, just so they kept hearing it and they kept hearing the words.
Hmm.
I think with your son, you can say, hand me the broccoli, tear the broccoli.
Okay.
You can have him put greens, say, in the sink and just put him up on a something that he can reach and just say swoosh him around. Like there's a lot of tactical things that he can do that are going to be fun for him, and even messy things that he can do. And I would try to engage him literally in any way. It makes a difference.
Okay. Okay. So they don't have to necessarily be in there with a knife chopping, but they can actually, I mean, and that comes into play too. I think about, spinach, and it's like I usually just rip it and tear it. So that's something
He
very
can
simple
do that.
to do. Yeah. Absolutely.
He
Yeah.
can do it. And anything that he can't do, show him how to do. And maybe he'll be able to do it and maybe he won't. But
Mhm.
I would, and I mean, the only problem with getting kids that young to help you is you really have to be patient, because they're going to make a mess,
Mhm.
which, depending on who you are, is going to drive you crazy. And the other thing is they're going to set you back. So like if you have a time constraint, if you have to have dinner on the table at 6 o'clock and you have a really short amount of time and
Mhm.
it sort of has to be perfect, don't involve him,
Right.
because it's not going to work. But like if you're prepping something ahead of time and you have lots of time and you're not going to freak out about the mess,
Mhm.
the other thing is I would get him now to be part of the cleanup,
Okay.
to have him think that that's an integral part.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, all of it. It's not his job to make the mess and your job to clean it up. It is
Right.
his job to clean it up.
Okay.
And honestly, I bet you he'll think it's fun. I'll tell you
Okay.
another story. We did a class where there were 6 or 8 girls. They were all around like 10. And 2 of them were cousins, and they were very competitive. Whatever one wanted to do, the other wanted to do. Like, didn't matter what it was. And then at some point, somebody asked one of them to sweep. And the other one was like, I want to sweep. And so the 2 of them were sweeping. It was great. But I
Yeah.
mean, you see that stuff. He just wants to do what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you think about like, I, you know, I think of kids and how they want to, I guess, playing into the role of the idea of like dressing up and stuff like that. So getting them their own apron, maybe have their name on it, just kind of having them feel like they really are in that role
Yeah, I
of the
think
cook.
it's huge. You
Mhm.
could even get him his own measuring cups.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It can be the smallest thing, and you don't have to get kid ones.
Right.
I mean, you can, but you can really, anything that's his. I did an experiment with twin boys who
Hmm.
were, one was really, really picky eater and the other one wasn't. But one of the things we did was we took one of the drawers, in the house that had utensils, and we put in measuring cups, peelers, measuring spoons, a couple things that were just theirs. And that sense of ownership really makes a difference. It was great. There's so much stuff you can do.
Okay. Yeah. I love these ideas. I really do. And I know with the publication, I do have the magazine. I also have the eatable alphabet.
Eatable
card.
alphabet. I was going to ask if I had sent that to you, so that I hope you're using that with your son.
Yeah, he knows. He may not eat the food yet, but he knows what it looks like. And
It's
I
fun.
think that's paramount, right? I mean, they, so many kids grow up now that don't even know what real food looks like.
Exactly.
And I think those cards really kind of play into that. And then being able to get involved in the kitchen and seeing what things look like before they get to the plate.
That's right. I mean, that's another thing is, you don't even, in order to start teaching about food, you don't even have to eat it. You could take, like, I'm just looking at what, like, I have a papaya over there. My friends don't even know what it is. People don't know what papayas are unless they're eating it on a regular basis. I'm obsessed with papayas, but literally, I'm going to grab it, okay? Because I'm going to tell you something you could do.
Yeah, that's cool. I like having visual cues and being able to use that as an example.
This is a particularly giant papaya. So
wow.
this papaya, it's from Guatemala.
Okay.
And you could say to the kid, okay, so we take the, so what color is it? What is the shape? Feel it. Is it heavy? And now this one's not ripe, but you could also, when it ripens, it gets more and more yellow. Like this. You can say, like, what color is this? And then you open it up and it's orange in the inside. So you could say, what color is the inside? You could you could say, smell the papaya. Doesn't really smell like anything, but once you open it, it does. So it could be smell it closed, smell it open, do the color open, do the color closed. You know what I mean? And there's so many questions you can ask about it, and then you can have them taste it. Again, not necessarily a papaya, but you can have them taste it, and you can have them taste it and say, what is the texture? If it, like in your son's case, he may not know the word texture, but you could say, is it squishy? Is it hard? And then you could have him taste it. Is it sweet? Is it, you could probably do, I'm serious, half an hour just on this.
Right. Okay.
He doesn't want half an hour on it. He wants a couple of minutes.
Right.
But there's so many things. I mean, this is really heavy. You could even weigh it. You could have your child stand on a scale and see what he weighs. And then you could say, now how much do you weigh with it?
Okay.
They're just, and the kid then is now, so right now, don't you kind of want to eat a papaya?
Right. Exactly. Now that we learned all of this about the papaya, why not eat it?
Right. And even, so this is from Guatemala. And here's what's crazy. It's called Caribbean red. Why? No idea. Didn't know that.
Yeah. And there's no red on it whatsoever.
Nope. I mean, the inside probably has some red red-ish. Yeah. But I'm just saying that you could do that with anything.
Okay. Yeah, that's very good. I love that.
The one thing about a papaya is it takes days to ripen. So I think if I were going to do something with papaya, I'd buy one today, and then I'd buy one in a couple of days, so that the one today is now ripe, so that you could show a ripe one and an unripe one.
Compare the two.
If that makes any sense. I mean, you can really do this with anything. And the kid, it's like so interesting to them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I love these ideas. I mean, these are, the whole focus of this event too that I've been doing is in our talk from the last session was to really get the family involved in like meal planning and eating healthy and how important it is for like the kids to understand this stuff. But, because sometimes with, spouses and other adults in the household, it's a little harder to motivate them.
You mean the adults?
The adults, yes.
Yeah.
Well, they're adults. Yes. Thank you. It's harder to motivate them if they're not on the same path as you. but it's a little bit easier to get the kids involved because it becomes more exciting for them, and they have that ownership and they can play the same role that you are as the cook.
Right.
So I love these ideas because it helps our participants, if they do have young kids or teenagers even in the house, so like different ways that they can really involve them in the process, which will help them in the long run, the adults in the long run, but also the kids. So it's a
So
win-win.
one thing is, so when my daughter was little, she was on a 5% fat diet. That's like nothing.
Yeah.
So we didn't have chips in the house. We didn't have ice cream. We didn't have anything she couldn't eat.
Hmm.
It's not to say we never ate those things. We did, but never in front of her.
Right.
And I think that as a result, she didn't feel like she was missing anything. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of the time when there's food in the house that the kids can't eat, or that it backfires, because
Hmm.
then that's all the kid wants.
Yeah.
And I do it you kids eating issues, this is not 100% at all, but
Hmm.
often stem from the parents.
Yeah.
And that, it's hard to say no to a kid. And I think, like, if
Hmm.
my son had been eating ice cream and my daughter couldn't have
Hmm.
I think it would just be hard. So I
Yeah.
think that a lot of the time it's really trying to engage the parents
Hmm.
as role models. And part
Hmm.
of what we see is that the kids, after they've been reading Chop Chop, or they've been in a class where they're cooking or something like that, and they go back home and they say to their parent, I want to make a salad. It's hard for a parent to say no to that, because even if you're just a junk food eater,
Hmm.
that's like a thing you want to promote in your
Right.
child.
Right.
So I do think that the conflict between what the parent wants to eat and what the child wants to eat is a big issue.
Hmm. Yeah. And in our program, we deal with adults in the CYL Square program. And the idea is to change their lifestyle so they can prevent type 2 diabetes, but it also helps with preventing, other chronic diseases. But, in this country now, we're having kids getting diagnosed with, prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. And so I think it's so important. What you're saying is that this education has to go to the parents because the kids can't really, they don't understand. They don't
Right.
understand.
And they're not in control.
They're not in control of any of that stuff. Yeah. So it has to
Right.
be the parents who are making those calls, the judgments on what to eat, what not
Exactly.
to bring into the house, that sort of thing.
Right.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard.
Mhm.
It's really hard, but I think that you want to be a good role model for your kid, and it can be very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the whole thing. That's why it's called a challenge,
Right.
right? It
Right.
is challenging, but you do the best you can, right? And
I
what
mean, you know, eating kids who eat dinner with their parents have higher grades.
Hmm.
Kids, I mean, the value of cooking and eating together is it's it impacts so many parts of life. It's
Yeah.
kind of unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this because, we talked about meal planning challenges that, myself and like other lifestyle coaches have had. I'd love to hear from you. Like, what has been your challenge when it comes to meal planning, and like, how have you overcome those?
It is hard. I mean, it's hard. I
Mhm.
think that I mean, there was a woman who used to work for Chop Chop who on Sunday sat down and mapped out the whole week.
Mhm.
And you know, she sort of used, like, okay, let's say, so Sunday night she was making some sort of chicken dish. Then on Tuesday, she'd do something with that extra chicken,
Mm.
that sort of thing. I think that that is a really great idea, but I think it's very hard for most people.
Yeah.
Um, I think so. I guess the way that I do it is I think of a meal as only one part. I don't know how to explain this exactly, that I'm like cooking. So for instance, I might make, so like last night I made chicken where you just sort of press sesame seeds into it.
Mm.
That's it. I sauteed that, or, I got it really brown, cooked through, and then I added some soy sauce. So that's the max kind of cooking I'm going to do. The rest is a salad. So I have homemade salad dressing all the time in my refrigerator, sometimes two kinds. So it's just a question of chopping some vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I was going to eat something else with it, it might be like a baked sweet potato or roasted cauliflower. So I'm not messing with a million different, do you know what I mean? I'm not like, so it's really like I eat a lot of roasted cauliflower. I love it. I cook it to death.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, really charred. That is chopping it up, which cauliflower might be hard for your 2.5-year-old, but he might be able to take the florets off. But then you throw that on a pan, you put a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper, done.
Mm-hmm.
And then the salad dressing, if the salad dressing is already made, and salad dressing is one of those things that is truly life-changing. People buy salad dressings all the time. They're filled with sugar, they're filled with salt, they're filled with chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
The best salad dressing is oil, vinegar, salt, and pepper. If you want to get fancy and add mustard to it or garlic, go crazy. Mm-hmm. But if you have that sitting in your fridge, and then you can just do it on greens. I think the key for me is to stay really simple.
Yes.
That's how I grew up. My mother people are always surprised I like interesting food with great flavors, but I don't like a million things going on. I'd rather have what I would describe as a simple meal. But I think in terms of meal planning, if you just have enough vegetables, and rice is another thing, you just throw the rice in with water, 40 minutes if it's brown, 20 minutes if it's white. So I think the thing to do is just to have the main part of the meal be something that you're kind of messing with. Okay. And I think it makes it much easier.
Yeah. I like that idea. I'm all about simplifying things. And I'm so glad that you talked about salad dressing, because I'm going to be in the kitchen next, and I made a couple of salad dressings.
That's great.
Yes.
And you know what? You could give it to your son. You could put it in something with a lid. Mm-hmm. You could screw it on, and you could just tell him to shake it like crazy. We do that at photo shoots, and the kids think it's hilarious.
That's great, because I have them in mason jars right now, so that's perfect.
Well, the only thing, are they the mason jars that actually screw on?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes. Yeah, that's perfect. Mm-hmm. And it makes such a difference. And here's the other thing. You can also take salad dressing and marinate chicken. Mm-hmm. Or steak. Yeah. So you can also bump up flavor. The other thing is you could make rubs, so spice rubs. We didn't do a ton of that in ChopChop. We do a little bit. But like if you're a family that likes spicy foods, I would just go online and look up spice rubs. And again, have a couple of them. I think the thing to do for meal planning, the most important thing is to have things in your pantry that make it simple. Awesome. So you can come home with chicken not knowing what you're going to do with it.
Mm-hmm. But if you have one of those marinades or the dressings, you could just marinate it, bake it, and then, find some vegetables. Yep.
Right.
Frozen vegetables are always great.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think, using salt and pepper properly, mm-hmm. Anything that's packaged or frozen, unfortunately, or processed in any way is going to have a lot of salt. So don't add salt to it. But if you're cooking things from the raw mm-hmm. state, just use salt and pepper properly, and it brings out flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, you mentioned the publication, and I know that the recipes that are in there are awesome. I mean, they're, I know, and I love the representation of the kids. There's a lot of lots of cultures that represented in the kids, so the kids can see their own, faces in there.
Right.
But in the recipes are so simple, but they also are very appealing to me. I'm looking at it like this is like real food. It's not the quote unquote kids food, which, ends up being what, corn dogs and chicken
Right.
nuggets, mac and cheese. But
There's enough of that out there. We don't
yeah.
need to teach anyone how to make it. I don't know if you've seen, this is our fall issue is actually about snacking. Your husband will like it. But it's making your own snacks.
Okay.
And, there's like a whole thing on rice cakes.
Okay.
What to do with rice cakes. So, yeah. And, I think this. We're also in Spanish.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have some people, some participants that are Spanish speaking. So they have the Spanish version of that, which I love. I love, love, love. Well, this has been such an awesome conversation, Sally. And I'm hoping that a lot of people out here have been able to take some, notes from the conversation we've had and use them in their own households. And I really, really appreciate you talking to us today, and such a great organization. Such a great organization.
It was so much fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
Call me anytime about your son.
I will. Any advice that I need. Well, I'll keep using those eatable alphabet cards for him.
Great.
He loves them. He loves anything that he can play with. He even tries to chew on the cards and every now and then, but we got to stop.
We've had that. We've had a couple of people write to us and ask if we have another one because their kid chewed it.
Yeah, it's like, this is not the broccoli. We don't want you to eat this.
Funny, isn't it?
Get you the real thing and let you try it.
Right.
But like I said, he's not the most adventurous eater yet, but he'll get there.
We'll get there.
So I thank you so much for introducing us to ChopChop Family.
It was a pleasure.
Appreciate you joining us so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. All right, guys. Well, next up, you'll be joining me in the kitchen. I'm going to be showing you my method of meal planning. So let's get cooking. Hi guys, and welcome to my kitchen. So like I said, I'm going to show you a little bit about my method of meal planning. Now it may look like a little bit of chaos and mess over here, but it is organized chaos, okay? So first thing I want to tell you guys about is, we've been talking a lot about food. So I wanted to show you some actual practical applications to this whole meal planning thing. All right, so first let's look at some tools. So very important, it's always important to have some sort of containers, okay? Something that's going to fit in like your lunch bag, something of that nature. I've gotten these, I think at TJ Maxx, Marshalls, but these have 3 different compartments to them. So it allows you to separate the food as needed. This is probably a leftover container from takeout somewhere. So I keep these because they actually work really well, very sturdy, and they don't leak. And that's going to be really important. If you want to stay away from the plastic, there's also glass. You can get some glass containers, but the glass container can also be separated into different compartments as well. These lids I do really like because it does create a nice airtight seal, so you're not leaking anything out of there. Okay? All right. And then, of course, when it comes to actually getting some of the food prepped, this little rice cooker is one of my best friends. So when I need my starch, a grain, something of that nature, I just throw it in there and forget about it. All right, and you can actually flavor up your rice, by adding some salt and pepper, some garlic. I usually put a clove of garlic in there when it cooks. And then, of course, the wonderful, wonderful food processor. Now, these food processors come in a lot of different sizes. So don't be afraid of, the big one if you don't have space or you don't have the budget to buy that. They actually come in little smaller sizes as well. And those really work well when you just need to kind of get things diced. Or if you're making like a salsa, it really works really well for a salsa. But the bigger ones do have the adapters on there so that you can do different kinds of cuts. So with this particular one, you can do shredding. So if you needed to shred some zucchini or something of that nature, you would just put it into the food processor and then you have it done. All right, so those are the good, that's the nice thing about having some of these tools around. All of them aren't necessary. Some of them are a little gimmicky. So just use what works with you. All right, so guys, what I'm going to show you is, I have some special stuff here. So if you are actually like working outside of the home and you need something to take your lunch in, you know, there's a ton of cute lunch bags out now, right? They look like purses. But these are some things that I found that have been really helpful. I sent one of these to my sister, and she loved it so much I bought one for myself. But it actually warms your food while you are at work. So there's actually back here, there's a cord. So you can plug it in. Inside here, there is this warming plate. You see that there? And so you're basically just putting your food in here. Once it's done, and you close it up, and it warms up your food. Wow. So if you're at a place where there's no microwave, or you prefer to stay away from the microwave, this is a really nice tool. Now, I live in Ohio, and you know, it's September, fall is on the horizon, so I do a lot of soups and stews. This little guy is really come in handy. So it's like a mini crock pot. But what you can do is you can get your soups and stews in here. And then what you'll do is you'll actually take this, plug it in, and now you have your soup warmed up. And you can turn it on probably, you know, an hour or so before lunchtime. That way it's nice and ready to go. Now, one more thing that I really like is this travel set of silverware. So I used to use like a bamboo set. Like, I like a protected environment. I used to use a bamboo set, but it's really hard to stab some lettuce with a bamboo fork. So I found these, bamboo handles, but silver as far as the utensil part of it goes. And this little thing actually comes with some chopsticks and a metal straw. So these are kind of the things that I have at my home. When I was working outside of the home, these always came in handy for me. All right, so let's get started with putting everything together, okay? So what I made today is I made 2 proteins. I baked some chicken thighs, and I grilled some mahi fish. And so those are my 2 proteins, but I've also left an option of having a vegetarian meal as well. So I roasted some chickpeas. All right, so what I'm going to do is just kind of pull everything together, and I'll talk about what I did as far as making the food as we go through this process. So these chicken thighs, and I do like chicken thighs. I like chicken thighs. I do not like chicken breasts, so I always do the chicken thighs. So if loving thighs is wrong, I don't want to be right. I like to have my meat a little bit juicy, and the chicken breasts always just are too dry. And what I did was I pan-seared the chicken before I actually put it into the dish to bake it. And I put on some of this. I found this jar of, it's like a pesto, chili pesto. So it's got a little spice to it. And, you know, a lot of vegetables in there as well. And it's really good. So I put that, a little bit of it on the chicken, and then baked it in the oven. So when it comes to the meal planning portion of this, what we can do here is we can use some of our containers to start building out some of the food, right? So I've got the grilled chicken. Like I said, I've got some mahi fish. And I love this mahi fish because I get it from Costco, and they come in individually wrapped. They're individually wrapped in a big bag. So if in a pinch, if I need something quick, you know, fish tends to thaw very quickly. So I'm able to just kind of grill that up and then make a salad. But today we're going to be prepared, right? All right, so I've got my fish here. We're going to take a piece of chicken and we'll put it in here. So we've got our chicken in there. And then what I did was I grilled some vegetables. So I did, you know, I like to just kind of figure out what's in the refrigerator that I need to use and use those. But I did the mini sweet peppers, which are so good because you don't have to do any cutting. So I cut up a little bit of onion, some mushroom, and some zucchini, because I found a zucchini in there that I'd had for quite a while. Now what I'm going to do, I don't know why I'm putting the vegetables in the small, tiny part of this. I'm going to move the chicken to the smaller part, right? Because when we talk about the proportions of our vegetables to proteins and starchy vegetables and fats, we want to make sure we're getting more of those vegetables, right? So we're going to make this, we're going to put the vegetables in the bigger part of this container. And you can see how colorful that is. So always, always, always just strive to eat the rainbow. All right. And then I did make some rice. So we're going to put a little bit of rice in here. And voila, you have it ready to go. So once you're done cooking all of the food, it's really important to just kind of figure out, instead of putting it into one big container, go ahead and get them into your portion containers. That way you don't have to worry about it later when you're packing a lunch or just trying to figure out what you're going to eat, right? All right, so there's that. Now with the fish, we're going to do a little something different, because you can see I've got a little bowl of salad here. Now this salad was really simple to make. I basically took a broccoli slaw, and which is basically like the root of the broccoli and carrots, and they're just shredded. Then I added in some red cabbage, just chopped up a little bit of red cabbage in there, and then got a bag of already chopped and washed kale, and I put that in there. So this is a nice salad because it'll hold the dressing really well, and it won't get soggy. So you can always dress this beforehand, but for this purpose, I'm not dressing it just yet, because we do have a couple of different dressings that we can play with over here. Move our chicken out of the way. There we go. Okay, and then so with the salad here, what we want to do is we're going to grab a little bit of salad. So again, I'm going to move this fish over into the smaller section, right? Because we want our proteins to be in that smaller section there. And when I was grilling the fish, I did grill some lemon with that as well. One little trick about lemon and fish is that when you cook with the lemon, it actually keeps the fishy smell down. It helps with the smell going out. You know, a lot of times when you cook fish, the smell is just everywhere. But this will help keep that from going everywhere. All right, so we've got our salad in there. I did make a couple of salad dressings. So I made a nice little creamy honey mustard, which I love honey mustard. So simple. It's just a little bit of honey, mustard, some olive oil, and then I put in some lime juice as well, and a clove of garlic, and just kind of blended that up in the food processor. I also made kind of like a green goddess kind of dressing. So this is parsley, a lot of parsley, some dill, some olive oil, garlic, and I think I used apple cider vinegar with this one. So depending on what your taste preference is, you can go either way with that. So I'm going to go ahead and pour the dressing over top of this. Now, if you have like mixed greens or something like that, you don't want to put the dressing on just yet. You may want to find some little container like this. I just found this at the grocery store. It's so cute. But it's like one of those travel containers almost. But it's specifically for salad dressing. So you can put your salad dressing in here. It guarantees that it's not going to spill out. And then you can pour on what you want when you get to your destination. I'm just going to put a little bit of this on here. The nice thing about, like I said, this being a hearty salad is that the kale and all of that is going to stand up very well to the dressing. Now you do want to make sure you kind of get it mixed in there pretty well, because kale is very hard to eat in a salad. That's why it's really important to chop it up into small pieces and then have the dressing sit on it for a little while. The acid in there, like from the vinegar and the lemon juice, will actually help to soften the kale. Just make sure it's mixed in really well there. That way the kale can soften up. It'll be a nice flavorful salad. Now the other option, you can add some rice. You have this rice here, right? Or you could add some of the mixed vegetables. So depending on what your flavor is, if you want to have some roasted vegetables and then some raw vegetables, or if you want to add the starch, you can do that as well. So we'll put a little bit of rice in here. There we go. And one thing that I like is a little bit of crunch and stuff for my salads. So I'll add in maybe some like the healthy fats, right? The sesame seeds, the pumpkin seeds. I love those in a salad. I also, like I said, roasted some chickpeas. You could always add a few of those to that as well. So these will be have a little crunch to them as in there. All right, so we've got 2 meals. Now, you know, one of the things that you can also do, if you wanted to do more of a vegetarian meal, you could do something like a bowl. Okay, so we'll start off with a little bit of rice. And remember, we don't need a whole lot of the starchy grains. We want to add in more of those vegetables, right? So we're going to add in our vegetables here. See, coming together already. So the idea of the Buddha bowls is always something that's really nice because they're basically a bowl of vegetables, usually has a grain, a protein, and then a nice dressing. So the dressings are really what helps sell it. So we've got that there. And then what we can do is we can add some of the chickpeas in here. So the chickpeas are going to be a little bit of protein for us. And then we have some options. So we have the honey mustard dressing that I made before. We have the green goddess dressing that I made. But we also have this pesto chili sauce. So any of these could work on top of that. I think for the time being, I'm going to put a little bit of the green sauce on top of there. Now, you don't necessarily have to put the sauce on right now. Right? The dressings sometimes are better if you just kind of wait until after everything's warmed up and then you can mix it in there. But for show and tell, I gotta show you guys what this is gonna look like when you're eating it, right? There you go. So very colorful. You get those greens in there that we need so much by adding it into the salad dressing. So you've got parsley and dill in there, and those are going to have the same properties that some of those other like leafy green vegetables we talk about are gonna do for you. All right, so we've got got two things down. Now, if you wanted to do a bowl with the chicken, you can do that as well. And the sky's the limit. So you can also you can do a salad. So I have a little container here. I love this container because it's so cute. So in the top portion, you can put your toppings. There's even a little container on here for the dressing. And then, so I have in here like the tomatoes, cucumbers, and then some pumpkin seeds. So, you know, you don't want to add in the stuff that's going to make everything soggy. So it's always good to just hold off on it. And this container allows you to do that. So I'm going to put some salad in here. So this could be a snack. This could be your meal. If you wanted to put some protein on there, you could. If you wanted to heat the protein up, I would suggest packing it in a separate container so that you can heat it up that way. And then you just place that on there. Everything is here, right? So, and again, I'm going to add a little bit of dressing on this so that it can sit for a while and get all mixed in and good. I'm going to get that in here, and we can put the lid on and shake it up a little bit if you want to. Just want to make sure it gets all mixed in there. There we go. And now we've got ourselves a nice little salad ready to go. And you can shake it up in there as well. And then when you're ready to eat it, put those toppings on and bon appetit. Now, another thing I did with these containers, too, when it comes to snacking, that's going to be really important, right? So I have, like, my veggies divided up. So I usually have some of these on hand in the refrigerator. So I've got some mini bell peppers, mini sweet peppers. They're so easy to just eat and snack on. I have some lemon hummus. So yummy. And I've got some snap peas and then, like, some rainbow carrots because I love having all the colors. So whatever veggies you like sometimes I'll have celery, sometimes I'll have some tomatoes in there. But they all taste good with the hummus. The hummus is going to provide a little bit of protein because of those chickpeas in there and a little bit of healthy fat because they've got the olive oil in there as well. But let me show you one of my favorite snacks of all time. Let me move this out of the way. So I love apples, and you know, September is big on apples. They're in season. They start kind of late summer and go into like early fall. So this is just one apple that I chopped up into the little pieces. And what I did was I sprinkled or squeezed a little bit of orange juice on it from an orange. If you don't have that, if you have some orange juice in the refrigerator, you can put that on there. You can even do lemon or lime. But it keeps the apples from browning. So what I did for a topping is I have a mixture of almonds, pecans, pumpkin seeds, some golden raisins, and then some ginger and cinnamon. So ginger and cinnamon are great because they're called warming spices, and these are things that kind of mimic a sweet taste. So even though you're not eating a whole lot of sweetness in here, it kind of gives you the feel of having something sweet. The golden raisins in there are necessary just because it makes it a little stickier, but you can always leave those out because, of course, the dried fruit is always going to be higher in sugar, right? Now, one of my favorite snacks is, and I put a little bit of this in here so that I keep it separate from the apples until I'm ready to enjoy it. So I use this little guy here. So basically, this just goes right over top. There you go. And of course you want to measure this out so you know how much you're getting as far as like these healthy fats are going. You can also use green apples to help lower the sugar. This one I think is a pink lady apple. But anyhow, this with the crumble on top is great. I mean, it really just, it's called a raw apple crisp. So it really kind of gives you that feel of eating like something sweet and decadent. This is going to be a great for snacking. So if when you're meal planning, you want to think about those snacks as well. Don't forget about the snacks because you're going to need those, right? Especially those time between lunch and dinner, or because usually if you're coming, you have to drive home and that sort of thing. It really does create a longer time, and you do need some nutrients between there. All right. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of some of the ways that you can work around the meal planning. Again, you want to make sure you make enough for the whole family. Try to get the kids involved in helping to chop or even using the food processor, making the dressings. Those are pretty easy. And you will notice if you do look up ChopChop Family, they do have some great ideas for kids. So that'll give you some ideas on things that you guys can make for the whole family. Because the recipes aren't just for kids. It's real food, real nutrients, and something that we all need and will enjoy. All right. So thank you guys for joining me in the kitchen. I hope this has been helpful for you. And again, if you want to go a little bit deeper into this meal challenge thing, I'm going to actually be doing a meal plan challenge in the BWHI app. So again, if you haven't downloaded the app yet, this is the time to do it. Download it, and you'll want to look for the challenge. I believe it's going to be a challenge community. You'll look for that and request to join. And all you have to do is just sign something that says you are committed to this. Send it to me, and we'll have so much fun doing this and breaking down the meal planning into smaller, achievable steps. All right, that's going to begin on September 26th. So don't forget. All right, I hope to see all of you guys there. And I will see you guys next week as we talk about self-care. I know we've been talking a lot about meal planning, but you got to take care of yourself if you're going to actually get on this road to better health. All right, guys, thank you so much. See you next week. And in the meantime,